Hey everyone, it's Blake. Welcome in to episode number 27 of our TCW Save and TEW 2020. This is Total Wrestling for April, week 4, the go-home edition for Where Angels Fear to Tread, our next pay-per-view, as we are now only a month away from our biggest show of the year, Total Mayhem. And if you're just seeing this one, I know you're like, wait a second, this guy hasn't uploaded anything in a while. We did do kind of a recap episode on the most recent one we uploaded several days ago. So if you want to go back and kind of check that out, that was kind of a going through sort of the history in case you had forgotten any of it, because it has been a couple months since we have uploaded, a normal episode here. So if you want to go back and watch the most recent episode, you can do that. We kind of played catch up on the storylines and all that, but I would also, if you don't want to watch that one, you could easily just watch the episode before this, the actual show episode. So week 3 of Total Wrestling would give you a pretty good idea of where things stand. But it was a lot of fun to go back through and rewatch a lot of these, because it helped me remember all the little tiny details that we had in place. So now that we booked this show, I feel like we are in a really good spot as we get closer again to Total Mayhem. But we got to do Where Angels Fear to Tread first, and that is also going to be a big show with a lot of big developments. So let's talk about Total Wrestling, though, because this is a big edition leading into the pay-per-view. And we start things off with a video package looking at the return of Chris Flynn, who, as we know, was kicked out of the Syndicate after Wolf sort of deemed him the weak one following, the loss at the war to settle the score and other things as well. So Chris Flynn's been on the sidelines for a couple months now, makes his way back last week, and goes face-to-face with Wolf and just starts hauling off on him. So we've kind of seen, the return of that. And by the way, it's an 82. And as always, Chris Flynn comes out of the segment looking poor. That is just something that we know is a recurring theme. But, hey, we've got to put this guy in here somewhere. And so we kind of take the hit on that. But we do get the video package looking at his return. Then we get Kyle Rhodes announcing a couple interesting things. For one, he announces that at Where Angels Fear to Tread on Saturday, Sunday, I don't remember what day we have our shows, but the next show, it will be Wolf Hawkins going one-on-one with Chris Flynn. So the grudge match in place. So Wolf Hawkins had quite a few grudge matches here recently. Daryl Devine last month. Now he has Chris Flynn, his former Syndicate partner and bodyguard. They're going to go one-on-one at Where Angels Fear to Tread. Also, Rhodes announces that we will hear from our TCW World Heavyweight Champion, Aaron Andrews, later tonight after the main event. Because Andrews will be in the main events at Where Angels Fear, as he will take on Greg Gage. We'll talk more about the setup to that one here in just a bit. But that's our opening segment here, 82. And so, after that, that's, we get all that on commentary from Kyle Rhodes. Now Kyle Rhodes enters the ring because the Syndicate is here. It is Wolf Hawkins, it is Doc Hammond, Eddie Chandler, and Nate Johnson. And immediately, you can tell that Wolf is not in a mood to play around here. He is in a very serious tone, and Wolf just completely takes aim at Chris Flynn, saying that Chris Flynn needs to remember who brought him here. He needs to remember who is the one that he has a job, in the first place. It's all because of Wolf Hawkins. It's all because of the Syndicate. And so Wolf says, Chris Flynn forgot that. He forgot that our rule has been the same as always. It's by any means necessary, and he couldn't get the job done, and that's why we kicked him out. And he said, we're not just going to kick him out of the Syndicate. We've already done that. We're going to kick him out of TCW for good when I get done with him at Where Angels Fear to Tread. So Wolf taking aim there, but then he adds, and also we're going to do this to somebody else, because everybody knows my frustration has boiled over with one-man army. And let me tell you, we found a solution to solve the army problem. And he says, so we know that the TCW officials have made the match that we requested. And one-man army apparently accepted. And I knew he would. It's going to be Eddie Chandler, one half of the Elite, taking on one-man army at Where Angels Fear to Tread. And Eddie is the one that's going to get the job done to make sure we kick him out of here too. Because the Syndicate runs this place, and by any means necessary, we will take anyone and everyone out of our way until we get exactly what we want. So, Wolf, again, taking aim at Chris Flynn. Also making it clear that all this stuff that's been kind of brewing with one-man army, that they're going to solve this problem. And as we said, it's been very interesting because of the dynamic with Doc Hammond, in one-man army having that big match at Battleground where it was essentially Hammond telling one-man army to stay down. He wouldn't do it. And so Hammond kind of finally delivered a blow to him. But we've seen the aggression pick up in recent weeks with Wolf demanding that Chandler and Johnson, really just take it to Army, while Doc Hammond has sort of just stood there, seemingly looking a little uneasy here. So what's going to happen, we will see. But a very determined Wolf Hawkins here, with clearly a mission for the Syndicate to take out multiple talents here in TCW. So let's get to 75 for this one. And that's going to lead us into our first match, which is Eddie Chandler once again showcasing that fabulous stretch, which he's used to make multiple, baby faces submit now over the past month or so. And he used it again here on main event Elliot Thomas. Yes, if you forgot. Remember, we had Elliot Thomas in the main event, and unfortunately, he's not going to stay there. He's got a long way to go. But Eddie Chandler gets the win here, 758, 61 match, so pretty decent. And we see the great chemistry, which I would not expect between these two. So that is notable here on that. But again, this is really pushing Eddie Chandler and how the Syndicate have turned up the aggression since Wolf has kind of laid down the law here. And so Eddie Chandler going into this match with one-man army at Where Angels Fear with a lot of momentum and aggression, seemingly. So Chandler gets the win over Elliot Thomas. Then we get an announcement that also in action at Where Angels Fear to Treads gets an 82, of course, because we got these two in here. T-Bone will be in action, and so will Edd Stone. So they'll both be in separate singles matches. So they are on the card for Where Angels Fear. And again, remember, we use some of these cards. Some of the matches have been built up, in a big fashion. Some of them are Clash of Champions-esque, where you just kind of get talents on the card. But there will be a reason that both of these guys will be on this card. But they will also be teaming in tonight's main event, as it will be T-Bone and Edd Stone teaming up against the one and only, you guys have been waiting a while for these guys to return, Freddy Huggins and Matt Hocking. So we get the party animals, Huggins and Stone, back on opposite sides again. We had that feud earlier in the save, but it's going to be T-Bone and Edd Stone taking on Huggins and Hocking in our main event. But again, these two will wrestle separately at the pay-per-view. So 82 for this one. And then, so now we're going to lead into the next match. So we just saw Eddie Chandler get the win, right? So the Syndicate stays ringside. Chandler and Johnson do, the Elite, because they both have singles matches. Nate Johnson's about to take on Bart Biggins here in singles action. But as this match gets going, 63 for the segment, Chandler's ringside, Bart Biggins out there by himself, and here comes One Man Army. Now again, keep in mind, One Man Army has taken an absolute beating over the past month. If you really think about it, the match with Doc Hammond, then, just taking the beating from the Elite, match with Wolf, all this stuff. So you can visibly tell that he is a little bit broken down here. But that does not stop him, because he's the man who continually says he will not give up. He will fight until he has nothing left. And so he is stomping down the ramp here. And he goes after Eddie Chandler on the outside. So we've got Bart Biggins versus Nate Johnson on the inside. Army just going after Chandler. And again, Army is just throwing haymakers here because it's all he's got left. Like, he doesn't have a lot left in the tank, but he is just going at Chandler, taking it to him. So we've got a little bit of a brawl on the outside. So, of course, Nate Johnson gets distracted by this and starts to head out there to, try to defend his partner here. But instead, he finds himself turning right into the B dropper from the one and only all heart Bart Biggins. I don't remember what we call him. So someone remind me what our nickname was for Bart Biggins. But Bart Biggins manages to hit the B dropper on Nate Johnson, and that allows him to get a surprise win, probably, for most people, over Nate Johnson here, 62 in this one. So, yes, we've used Bart Biggins in, singles matches and all that. We haven't really used Nate Johnson. And I don't know if we've used him in any singles matches at this point, to be honest. We may have used him one or two, but nothing notable. But the Elite, one half the Elite taking a pin here is somewhat notable because they have been on kind of a tear recently. So it's one-man army costing Nate Johnson the match here, essentially, because he gets involved with Chandler and Bart Biggins, who has just certainly had an up-and-down road here thus far, able to capitalize and get the win over Nate Johnson. So what could this lead to for Bart Biggins? And most of all, what could be the response from the Elite, who just took a pinfall here in this match. Perhaps we'll find out soon enough. 62, not a bad match for these two. All right, now we get another announcement to more stuff being added to Where Angels Fear. And Noah said, some of these pay-per-views, we add stuff way in advance. This one was one where this is essentially your setup pay-per-view for Total Mayhem. And so, again, some of the stuff we've had in motion. Let's get to 68, by the way. But some of the stuff is just kind of coming together pretty quickly. Joshua Taylor's going to take on Daryl Devine. And this comes off of a week ago. It was Joshua Taylor going one-on-one with Chance Fortune. Fortune, hard-fought match, but Taylor, once again, using his submission technical moves, he just couldn't do it. Fortune couldn't get out. And then after match, we kind of had a little bit of a stare down between Taylor and Devine. So we're playing that up here. Joshua Taylor's going to take on Daryl Devine. And, of course, remember, Taylor has not lost a match in our series thus far. Since losing at Psycho Circus, which was right before we started the save, he lost Aaron Andrews in the main event title match. He's not lost since. Every match he's won to this point. So he's on a 4-month winning streak here. And so he's going to take on Daryl Devine. And we've also added to the mix. We talked about him earlier. They're still to come in our main event. Freddy, Huggins, and Matt Hocking are going to team up to take on Benny Benson and Flying Jimmy Fox. This comes out of some recent shenanigans involving these two, where if you remember a couple weeks ago, it was Freddy Huggins making his triumphant return after he lost his opportunity to beat Aaron Andrews at Battleground. That was our main event. Aaron Andrews retained the title over Freddy Huggins. Freddy returns with a letter. He has this long scroll he's going to read about how he demands a rematch for the championship. And instead, Benson was checking on Fox, who had just lost a match. I think it may have been to Joshua Taylor. I don't remember exactly who it was. But so Benson was checking on a Fox. Huggins and Hocking tried to just shove these guys out of the ring. That led to, of course, chaos ensuing. And then last week, Wolf took on Flying Jimmy Fox in the main event. Afterwards, it was Huggins and Hocking attacking these two. So we've kind of set this up over the past several weeks. So it leads to a big tag team match at Where Angels Fear between these two. But again, Freddie and Matt, they're going to be in our main event. So 68, couple more matches added to the card there. All right, speaking of tag teams, it's going to be Ernest Youngman and Troy Tornado getting the win over Dazzling Dave Diamond and Dean Daniels here. So, of course, Elliot Thomas wrestled earlier, so we couldn't have our usual Thomas and Daniels pairing, our jobber tag team. So we had to put Dazzling Dave in here, but don't worry, it was Dean Daniels taking the pin. No surprise there. Who gets the win? Of course, it's Ernest Youngman. The hit, and we continue to kind of push here that every time we see this move, every time we see the hit from Ernest Youngman, it just looks more and more vicious. Like you just see it getting more and more vicious here. And Youngman doing that, and getting the win. But we are also pushing the fact that, remember, when these two teams started, it was basically Ernest Youngman would not let Troy Tornado in the match. He did all the work, and he was just beating people, by himself essentially. But now, each match, Youngman's letting Tornado in a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And you see the teamwork starting to come together between these two guys. So that is worth reminding you of, and something to keep in your mind as you move forward with these two in our stories. So 52 for the match, not great, but again, we know what the point is here, and that is to continue to get the popularity up for one and only Ernest Youngman. So a tag team win. Dazzling Dave stays strong, and of course we weren't putting a match over 8 minutes with Dazzling Dave involved because he would have probably, he would have needed a water break or something. So 52 for this one. All right, now we get a video pack. Wow, this did much better than I would have expected. So we get a video package looking at the history of the Peak brothers. And yes, that's been one of our recent developments over the past month is the addition of Doug Peak, Eddie Peak's brother, to the Center Society. And that led to the back and forth, with our current tag team champions, Mighty Mo and Tana, Mighty Meaty, getting the challenge from Eddie Peak and Doug Peak. And so we have that official for Where Angels Fear. That's been set up for, I guess, a couple weeks now. So that'll be our tag team title match at that show. This coming up at the pay-per-view. And so we get kind of a highlight package here looking at the history of these two teaming in different promotions and the success they've had and just kind of their background, as brothers and their upbringing and all that kind of stuff, right? Like really getting the featured video package here for these two. And again, just kind of showcasing what perhaps Mighty Mo and Tan are up against when they defend their titles against these two, which, remember, is all about Eddie Peak saying that he's going to lead by example because we've seen, Killer Shark and Titan have the titles. They've lost them to Mighty Mo and Tana. So now Peak wants to get the titles back to the Center Society, but he's going to bring it to himself and his brother, not to Killer Shark and Titan. So 78, good package here. So really playing that up. And speaking of Killer Shark and Titan, they're in action. The Behemoths getting the win over Harvey Robinfield and Guillotine. So these are two kind of, developmental guys. So we bring them up to team here. I think Guillotine, maybe the first time we've had him on the show, actually. Looks like he should be a part of the Center Society, in all honesty. Looks like he'd be the long-lost brother here of Titan or Killer Shark. I don't know. But, so they get the win. Just kind of a featured match. For the Behemoths, Titan with the Titanic Chokeslam, which he's beaten multiple people with at this point. I think he beat Dazzling Dave with that, too. So 52, not a great match. This is going to be a show where we just don't have a lot of good matches. But it's your setup before the pay-per-view, so sometimes that happens. So, all right, let's get to this, as this is sort of a play off of something that happened a couple weeks ago. And that was we had the Syndicate in the parking lot, and now we kind of get the same situation here, where it is Kyle Rhodes alerting us that Sean Dokes has once again found his way to the parking lot. And the reason Sean Dokes is rushing to the parking lot is that he hears that, there's more commotion again from the Syndicate. Last time around, it was Wolf Hawkins very upset. And what was he upset about the last time? He was upset about One Man Army getting involved in their business, and he was back there, kind of scolding the Elite. And then, he kind of gave Doc Hammond a little bit of a chest pat saying, you need to finish this. And so we hear it again. Wolf is just kind of, dressing down the Syndicate here because, again, Nate Johnson just lost a match to Bart Biggins because of One Man Army. So Army continuing to be involved in this and really just piss Wolf off time and time again. And so Wolf says, he's yelling, and we see Sean Dokes rushing. So the video cameras are getting back there to the parking lot. And that is when sort of we get kind of the final part of this. We don't hear everything, but we just hear the yelling from Wolf. And then he finally says, I told you, damn it. He says, you need to be the one to finish the job. And so he is looking directly at Doc Hammond. He is right in Doc Hammond's face. We get the video cameras, and all of a sudden Wolf turns around. And again, it's like he sees Sean Dokes here, and Wolf just storms by Sean Dokes, pissed off. But as he does that, we can see the Syndicate just sort of standing there, and we see Sean Dokes turn back towards Wolf. And once again, just like we saw the last time, it is Wolf taking something out of his pocket, and it is once again, Wolf has a phone, and he picks it up, and Wolf is on the phone with someone as sort of the video cameras cut out here. So who is Wolf talking to? We've seen that 2 times now over the past 3 weeks. Who is this guy talking to? We don't know, but what we do know is he was just talking to Doc Hammond and says that he's made it as clear as he can make it. Doc Hammond needs to finish this job, and we know what he's talking about. It's One Man Army. So what's going to happen here? We will find out. So 67 for this segment. We're going to blame Sean Dokes. Perform poorly here. A Wolf segment should never get a 67, but it's okay. There's your continued advancement there. All right, Daryl Devine, we mentioned him earlier. He's going to get a shot at Joshua Taylor at Where Angels Fear. He gets a win over Jeremy Courtney here, another jobber, 751. The Divine Dream drop, the Triple D here gets it done. So 61 for this one. Not about the match, more about after the match. As it is Kyle Rhodes in the ring. And he asked Daryl Devine, what does he think about facing Joshua Taylor, someone who has, again, just been on an absolute tear and has not lost a match in 4 months. And Devine says, Kyle Rhodes, I'll say it. I mean, everyone has seen me. Once again, I'm the ultimate underdog, right? Like, I just keep coming up short. I've had my opportunities. I almost beat Wolf Hawkins 3 weeks ago. I almost beat him. I had him beat, but I just could not do it. He said, this may be it for me. The ultimate underdog. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the label. Like, this is my opportunity to prove that I belong in that international championship match, to prove that I belong, as someone who can actually hold a championship in TCW, a singles title. And I know my partner here, Chance Fortune, supports me. He knows that's all I'm trying to get. I'm trying to prove that I'm not just the underdog. I'm trying to prove that I'm a champion. And so Divine just kind of pushing this and saying, hey, if I'm able to beat Joshua Taylor and end his streak, then I think I belong in that international championship match against Joshua Taylor at Total Mayhem. So really playing that up, and keep in mind, again, if you forgot, we're bringing back the international championship. That was announced at, I don't know, maybe in the first week of April, right after Battleground. Kyle Rhodes announced that TCW officials had said they're bringing back the championship, and we know it's going to be a one-on-one match at Total Mayhem. And we know that one half is going to be Joshua Taylor because of this long winning streak he's on. But we don't know who the other person's going to be yet. That will be announced at Where Angels Fear. We've already made that clear. So if Daryl Devine were to beat Joshua Taylor, then potentially do we get the rematch for the International Championship at Total Mayhem? That is what Daryl Devine is pushing for. So we will see. A lot more at stake, perhaps, than we thought for Daryl Devine leading into this one, but perhaps quite a bit on the line here as we head into this one-on-one match between Joshua Taylor and Daryl Devine. So 63 for this one. And next up, we get to our main event. So this is our angle before our main event here. So we have, again, Huggins and Hocking in the match. So they're facing T-Bone and Edd Stone. And here comes Benson and Fox. Because remember, it was these two who jumped these two last week, and we've just had the back and forth with them, as we know, over the past several weeks now. And so Benson and Fox start to make their way down. That's when we see Freddy Huggins, he turns and, crowd's buzzing. He lays eyes on, Benson and Fox, and we know what Freddy Huggins is doing at that point, right? It's the ultimate Freddy Huggins move. He gives Matt Hocking a tap on the shoulder, as they're kind of, conversing in the side, or in the corner. And then what do? 64 for this one. Of course. So it is T-Bone and Edd Stone getting the win at 14:40. So again, this is a little bit later in the match, kind of at a break where these two are, trying to talk strategy in the corner. But Matt Hocking, Huggins informs him that we're getting out of here. Like, we're not staying for this match because here comes Benson and Fox, right? So Hocking goes with Huggins. They intentionally get counted out. And so that's kind of your setup here for this one. So it gets to 73. Not a great match, but better than most on this show. And since it's our main event, we'll take it, right? So, look at T-Bone, 80 in-ring performance. But look at Freddy. Freddy also with an 80. Just tremendous work from this guy. So Huggins doesn't care about losing the match. It means nothing to him. So they get counted out. So these two get the win. And that's when you just kind of see, Benson and Fox kind of walking towards them as we see these two retreating to the back. So that's really nothing more to the story there. But again, also focusing on the fact that T-Bone and Edd Stone will be in singles action at Where Angels Fear, and they pick up a win here, even by intentional countout, moving into that. So after the match is over, we see T-Bone and Edd Stone making their way out. So everyone's, kind of leaving the ring, and that is when Kyle Rhodes announces, folks, we're not done here because, as mentioned earlier, our TCW World Heavyweight Champion, Aaron Andrews, is going to come out and speak. He has requested some interview time, and so he will be out here right after this commercial break. So we go to commercial, we come back, and here comes Aaron Andrews and Sammy Bach. So he gets an 82. This should have did a little bit better, but it's okay. Should have been better, but that's all right. So Andrews and Bach make their way to the ring. So these two, Sammy Bach kind of protecting his friend here. We know everybody is taking aim at Aaron Andrews right now. That's the big story, right? Is Aaron Andrews has challengers all over the place. And so Andrews comes out, Sammy Bach coming out. They're making their way to the ring. They finally get up there and get into the ring, and that's when we see Kyle Rhodes stand up from the announce desk. So he's coming to join them, as always. Kyle going to hold the microphone, all that good stuff. 82 for this. But before Kyle Rhodes can make it into the ring, what happens? Here they are. You've been waiting on them. Jay Cord and Greg Gage. They hit the ring, and so they come from kind of the corner that these two, are opposite. So they see them, but they see them right at the last second there. And so that allows Jay Cord and Greg Gage to hit a couple cheap shots on these two. You've got Greg Gage with the belt, so he's able to hit a cheap shot right to kind of the gut of Aaron Andrews. You see Jay Cord hitting a cheap shot, essentially a low blow on Sammy Bach. And so these two are down now. They've taken a couple cheap shots. So, again, they know everyone's coming at them, but even with that, they're not able to kind of defend themselves from a couple cheap shots. So Jay Cord and Greg Gage are now kicking at Aaron Andrews and Sammy Bach. And so this gets an 87. So these two are, the heels are gaining the crowd's in a frenzy. They're trying to cheer these two on, but they've taken a couple cheap shots, and now they're down, and they're struggling to defend themselves, right? So this continues, but then the crowd roars because they see someone who is going to be able to save the day, right? And who is it? Well, it is none other than Angry Gilmore. As Gilmore makes his way down, enters the ring, and Jay Cord tries to go after him. Gilmore hauls off on Jay Cord, and then Greg Gage tries to go after him. Gilmore hauls off on Greg Gage, and it sends these two down. 93, tremendous stuff again. That's fantastic. So Gilmore has cleaned house here. He takes out Jay Cord. Remember, they had the huge match at Battleground with Gilmore getting the win via what Jay Cord deemed distraction from Sammy Bach. And now he takes aim here at Greg Gage to help these two out, because if you have gone back and watched some of the recent episodes, that is something we set up on one of the recent ones, was the fact that Angry Gilmore gave an interview. Kyle Rhodes says, "Why are you here? Why did you come to TCW?" Gilmore made it clear he came to TCW to be the real world champion, to be the champion, the belt that meant the most in pro wrestling is the TCW World Heavyweight title. He came here to win that, but he said, that's not going to stop me from, helping you guys out when you need it, whether it's from Jay Cord and Greg Gage, whether it's from the Syndicate. Gilmore said he has their back. So babyfaces kind of uniting here. That's been the story over the past couple weeks. And so Gilmore, a man of his word, comes out. These two find themselves, in a situation where they're taken down by the heels, and he makes the save. So the babyfaces stand tall. Gilmore helps up Andrews. He helps up Sammy Bach. But again, remember, Gilmore's also wanting a shot at that championship. And so that's kind of your setup here as we finish up this edition of Total Wrestling with a 93 segment. Greg Gage underperforms, but hey, that's okay because he's in a 93 segment. And he's about to be in the main event against Aaron Andrews. And just as a reminder, that is a non-title match. This is a challenge, basically a challenge match where Greg Gage, our TV champion, Aaron Andrews, our world champion. This is all about Greg Gage proving that he can beat Aaron Andrews. That was kind of our setup here. So, a non-title match, but it's a big match nonetheless because it is our world champion versus our TV champion. So, interesting stuff there. But Angry Gilmore making the save. That is a development here as we wrap up this edition of Total Wrestling, which gets an 80. So I don't think this would probably be one of our better shows, but I can't remember because it's been so long in terms of what our recent ratings are. We'll look at those on the state of after Where Angels Fear to Tread. But for now, we did, I think, get back on track in terms of, I went back. Like I said, I had to make sure I got all the little details, and luckily I remembered a lot of the stuff that we were going to be doing. So that's a good thing because we are definitely, I think, hitting some momentum here as we build up some of this stuff heading into Where Angels Fear, but also on the road to what will just be hopefully an unforgettable Total Mayhem based on some stuff that we have in the works. So there you go. That was this edition of Total Wrestling. Let's see what we get to before we wrap up. All right, so that was Total Wrestling, a positive show. We didn't strike gold. That's okay. SWF, as always, our challenger. They had an excellent show, so good for them. What did they get, actually, for this edition? So they got a 79, so we still had a better show, although they had a little bit better stuff maybe on there. Let's look at our mail real quick. Let's see. We're going to look at our drug test fees and then our viewing figures, 3.57 for the TV rating. So we will go look at the ratings for the evening and see how we did. Remember, we've overtaken Premier League football now. So, yeah, and we continue to do that here. So viewership, we get another win. We are still beating, SWF by 500,000, I guess it looks like now. In terms of the TV rating, yeah, we're doing pretty well right now. So we're building some momentum. Remember, we had just jumped up in size to big now too. So yeah, we're in a pretty good spot. So yeah, we're on a roll right now for TCW, and I think that's only going to continue as we head towards the next couple of pay-per-views. So again, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I appreciate you being patient. I know it took a while to get to this next episode proper, not just the recap episode. But again, I'm excited to jump back into this because it was a lot of fun to go back through and remember kind of all the storylines we had in place and all the fun we've had with these characters and all that. So I think you're going to really enjoy the road to Total Mayhem. So if you want to do that, hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button as well. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yes, this will continue the road, as we said, the Total Mayhem. But I'm also pretty sure now that we're going to be starting a new save. And it's not the one that I keep saying that I recorded last June and have it actually ready to go. It's actually going to be another one. But don't worry. I think it's one that a lot of you are going to enjoy based on maybe some other things we've done on the channel. So we will talk more about that here soon. But for now, again, I appreciate you guys watching as always. And on the next episode of our TCW Save, it will be our official preview for Where Angels Fear to Tread.